And we are actually really, seriously though, we're running short on time, so we're going to take these down to 1 minute. So the first question is from someone who says, do the candidates have a plan for enhancing community policing in the 36th district? And we're going to start with Reverend Tillett.
Yes. In fact, one of the things that I have always done as a minister, I've always been in precincts. I've taught sensitivity training classes in precincts. Every year at my church, we have an annual First Responders Day, where we bring in the police from the local precincts, the EMS workers, all of the first responders, and we honor them. And I believe that keeping important relationships with the police is very important. As vehemently as I oppose stop and frisk, I also have 4 sons and a daughter and a wife that walk around this community.
30 seconds.
Police are indispensable. We have to have a constructive relationship with them and return to solid community policing. That's my point.
Ms. Cornigan.
Currently in the 7, 9, and 8, 1 precincts under Inspector LaPetrie and Inspector Holmes, respectively, they have impact zones. So where they've noticed that there's increased crime or activity, they deploy more officers to that area. We've begun to simultaneously do what we call max impact, and where they have impact zones, we're deploying resources. So information for those people who are susceptible to doing crimes and committing crimes, where they've identified them and have the ability to lock them up, we're going in and providing them with opportunities. So whether it's educational opportunities or job opportunities, we're partnering with them right now today to make sure that in their impact zones, we're doing a max impact and giving those individuals an opportunity not to become part of the system, but to have information that will get them out of the system. So while there's an impact zone in 7, 9, and 8, 1, we have max impact that mirrors that and goes in with resources to make sure that they have the available resources to get out of that recurring system.
Mr. Foy.
So community policing can't happen on the precinct level. It has to happen at one police plaza. And so Project Impact is not a model that exists just in the 7-9 or the 8-1. It happens citywide. But it is a program that exists because we do not have sufficient force levels. We do not have enough police officers that can prevent crime from happening. So what happens is you have Project Impact that goes in after we've begun to see an uptick in crime. What we need to do is adjust our policing philosophies so that we have sufficient officers present to deter crime, so that we have programs that are in place that deter young people from engaging, that provide an alternative. There are alternatives to Project Impact and Stop and Frisk that have been proven by data to be more successful. Violence interrupters, programs like SOS and Man Up that provide alternatives.
Thanks, Mr. Foy.
That's the direction we need to move.
We're going to move on to Mr. Sweeney.
I apologize to the audience if you think that I'm having a problem with the moderators, but every debate that I've been on, it almost seems like it's a 3-man race, and I'm tired of it. Here's what we need to do. We need to find a way to talk to our young people and definitely work with the police. I mean, these impact zones are there for a reason. If there was a shooting, you're going to have an impact zone. If there's a violence, robbery, you're going to have that pressure on the community. I've witnessed many times that when the police come around, you know, we have to have a new way how we engage them so that they don't ride us. The law-abiding citizens pay the ultimate price when you run into the bank for 2 minutes, you get a ticket because there's so many cops around. Redeploy the police where the taxpayers, the law-abiding citizens, near the subways, where you come off the Nostrand Avenue and you see a bunch of kids in the middle, in the way, cursing, screaming, benches, all kind of loitering. We need to change how we do what we do in our community and start retraining our youth on how to deal with the police in a better way.
Thank you, Mr. Sweeney. We're going to take one last question from the audience. Again, it's 1 minute. The question is, how will you address the hospital closings? And if you could also squeeze in, what happens if Interfaith closes? Mr. Sweeney?
I'm so happy that we mentioned Interfaith. There's not one candidate that's running for this city council that hasn't done anything for Interfaith. Getting locked up is nothing. The People's Committee to Save Interfaith have been working for 21 months. We have read, no one's read the bankruptcy documentation. No one, these are Johnny-come-lately individuals with this issue. The advisory board, they put a new advisory board, no information on what's going on. The board has to go. If you read these documents, if you want to educate yourself, the governor never said he wanted to close the hospital. It's mismanagement. The hospital's filthy. Interfaith is not going to close. The state is under pressure from the federal government to save money, restructure how they buy their medication, everything. Medicaid, you name it. Services are being shifted from hospitals to preventive cares. We have to change how we do business, and this hospital is not going to close. But there's not a, you're going to get guys saying, oh, I went to jail, I did this. Read the documents. We were the ones to put the motions in.
Thanks, Mr. Sweeney.
The People's Committee.
Moving on to Mr. Foy.
So the closure of Interfaith is a very real danger. And it took court intervention to prolong the process. So they were to begin closing the closure proceedings yesterday. That's very real. It took a court intervention to push the closure beginning process into September. No, me going to jail or Mr. Cornegie rallying or any of us who have been rallying to save Interfaith, those individual actions are not going to save the hospital. But it is a collective voice of the community. People who may have differences of opinion who come together and agree we cannot allow this hospital to close. It was under the leadership of the organization you're talking about that allowed Interfaith to go from a potential merger to a probable closure. And so that's not the leadership that's going to save the hospital. Originally, it was intended to merge with Brooklyn Hospital with a scale back of services. Now we're talking about shuttering the doors.
Thank you, Mr. Foy. Mr. Cornegie.
So in regards to Mr. Sweeney, I've had the pleasure of working with the People's Committee and have invited them to almost everything I've ever participated in, so I'm surprised to hear that. We're working diligently to make sure we keep Interfaith open. There's been an injunction that put in place that stopped the closure for today. We have a meeting scheduled with the governor coming up, and I've had the pleasure of sitting in on federal talks about Medicaid, about the Medicaid waiver and that $20 billion that's responsible for that. So on every single level, I've been present and have been able to, I'm a member of the Community Advisory Board as well as the Vice Chair of Health and Social Services for Community Board 3, and have done everything in my power and have used that pulpit to rally people around the closure, because Mr. Foy is right. Without the community's input and without a solid consensus, it will close. So we've done everything we possibly can and are going to continue to do. We have a rally coming up the 3rd to make sure that the people's voices are here and that the governor knows that this is a hospital, and we want to make sure that there's a moratorium on hospital closures for the borough of Brooklyn, period, not just Interfaith.
Reverend Tiller.
Well, I want to say that I have been involved in this struggle for at least 21 months, and I want to acknowledge that when I got involved in the struggle to keep Interfaith open, Sweeney was there. And when I start opening up our church, because again, I say ministry can't be so heavenly bound that it's no earthly good. When we start having town hall meetings at my church to keep this hospital open, he was there. But I also appreciate the board. I have a lot of wonderful friends on that advisory board. I think they're doing a good job. But I have not heard, and we've got to talk about how this hospital got in this position. You can't go to the governor and ask him to save a hospital, keep a hospital operating under the conditions that got it into this situation.
Mr. Sweeney, I'm going to give you 30 seconds.
Really quickly, ladies and gentlemen, here's the deal. 21 months ago at the community board meeting, I stood up and we mentioned about the hospital. I'm not trying to throw anyone under the bus, Mr. Carnegie or Foy. But when you start to play games, when people are losing their jobs, the federal government stated that they were going to cut Medicaid, save money. There's $3 billion worth of savings that's going to come out of this. But when you stand here and you say that you're the district leader, Floyd, when you come with Al Sharpton and you guys do all these visuals and everything, we've done that months ago, and we asked each and every person that would have been involved to come out. But they saw a small 6 group of community people taking
We're gonna move
Solve
on
the
to
problem.
closing arguments right now. We're gonna move on to our closing remarks.
Closing arguments?
Closing